Welcome to David. Actually, are we allowed to call you David, or do we have to call you David's cousin?
No, actually, I think honestly, we had a breakthrough this weekend in terms of my views of LinkedIn, which I'm surprised it took so long. So we'll talk about that. But no, David Ramsden-Wood works. DRW works. That asshole from the hot take of the day works too. Whatever people want to refer to me as long as they're listening and doing the research themselves, I don't really care.
Right. And as long as they take this information that they're about to hear from to their own heart, because this is going to be an awesome hour of some stellar conversation for folks in the oil industry, which I'm in, and in the industrial market, and just especially in where we get our information. So David Ramsden-Wood, entrepreneur, author. I haven't had a chance to read your book. I just found out you were an author, actually, when I was on your website, and I happened to see that. So I'm looking forward to the book. Common sense guy, hot take of the day, commentator on LinkedIn and every single social media post you can find. What was it like when you were at Enerplus in North Dakota? Well, did you ever go to North Dakota?
All the time. Yeah.
All the time. All right. Compare North Dakota to New Mexico.
Cool. Colder. Obviously, like having to deal with minus 40 and the temperatures in January, you just don't have to deal with that in New Mexico. In New Mexico, there's a tremendous amount of surface line, right? So surface water, surface pipes, like freezing is not an issue. Legacy, tremendous amount of legacy infrastructure. So, anyone who's ever flown into Midland knows what I'm talking about. It's just barren, no trees and well pads everywhere with pipelines going every which direction. So it makes it easier to tie in. So, some of the challenges with North Dakota, and especially in 2008, was frac technology was really in its infancy. Spacing and understanding what horizontals could do, what they could do from drainage was really in its infancy. We were still in this concept of get to manufacturing. The world had gone through a financial crisis in 2008. Oil was 80, headed to, north of 140. It was very busy. We didn't have the equipment. We didn't have the crews. We didn't have the technology. Wells took, 60 days to drill. And now you flash forward. But New Mexico, it was the last frontier in terms of developments in the oil and gas space. Every other place, Texas has been so easy to operate in. New Mexico has a tremendous amount of federal acreage, and therefore the Fed is scattered. So there's probably a federal piece of acreage in your unit. Therefore, everything's federal permitting. So it was longer, not everything, but a lot. So longer time to permit, longer time to space, a lot of legacy shallow Bone Springs production, a lot of water issues, just a whole bunch of things that made New Mexico very different. But the overlay was exactly like the Bakken in 2008, which was misunderstood, huge resource, huge inventory, and an acquisition price that made sense as a relative valuation to what it should be worth in a fully developed scenario.
So they're still at it even despite the crisis that happened.
The Permian, if people look at production, the Permian is the only basin that has continued to grow, with the exception of a small piece in 2020 when we had the shutdowns because there was no oil demand. But the Permian is higher now today in oil production than it was pre-crisis.
Well, yeah,
only basin that has done that.
Right. So it's interesting. We do a little bit of work for Enerplus, actually. I don't normally mention clients, but in the Bakken, and they recently acquired a field that we had been a service provider on. So, and we entered the Permian back in 2017 and noticed much of the same as you have. I generally fly into Hobbs, New Mexico. And that's another spot. When you fly over, you're just like, wow, you look underneath it, you as you're flying in and think, look at the amount of opportunity that exists in this old aging infrastructure. And it's really exciting to see some bigger players come to the table that better understand that geology and make some really cool inroads. Awesome. Well, thanks for what you do on behalf of everyone at Wescom in our industry. We appreciate it, David.
I sure appreciate the time. Thank you. Hope everyone enjoyed.
Yeah, thanks. Take care. Really excited to sit down with Bryn Johnston today, president, I think, at JBW, and get a little of your backstory. So, Bryn, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you. I'm happy to join. So I'm a mechanical engineer by education, by trade, a professional engineer. And I guess I'm the president of JBW, which has kind of grown quite a bit in the past. We started it 4 years ago, and it's grown probably faster than I anticipated, but it's been good. It's been really good growth.
Yeah. So what, as you've been talking here, you grew from 0 to 31, 32 folks. You have 3 offices. You got one in Duluth, one in Gillette, one in Sheridan. Mm-hmm. What drove you to entrepreneurship versus just working for somebody?
I don't know. I mean,
you just made
just thought I'd try it. I mean that's, when I decided to go on my own, it was just a decision. I thought I could probably work, so I tried it out. And I wish I had a better answer than that. I don't.
But Bryn, did you actually sit down and do a business plan and do everything they tell you? Really? Mm-hmm. And so as you've been on this journey, is there any big surprise that has occurred to you other than the cost of health insurance?
Yeah, I guess, I think the biggest eye opener to me has been the emotional roller coaster that business is. When you do your business plan and you fill out a spreadsheet, it's pretty cut and dried. You need to bill this many hours to make this much money to make a profit. Do you have the work to do that? Yes, no, maybe so. And consulting is, it's a lot easier than running an electrical company or a construction company. We don't have materials coming in and out. We don't have vans. We have computers and software, but that's nothing. So it's not that gutsy, really. But what I didn't really anticipate was, just the emotional roller coaster of work coming in or work not coming in. You start to overthink stuff and wonder, did I make the right decision or not? And that's probably the part and then it's been 4 years now. So that starts to mellow out too, it feels like, over time. You start to see patterns and you kind of can predict what might happen. And
well, experience has a good way of teaching us what to worry about and what not to, right? Mm-hmm. And once you've been through a COVID, frankly, you can survive a lot depending on how it impacted you.
You'd hope so.
Yeah. So as you've went through that, have you found a strategy to help with those that roller coaster?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, for sure. And the biggest thing is just having a good team, I think, to talk about it with.
Yeah.
I mean, Nick, who's, kind of been there for he started about a year after JBW started, and he's kind of a good level head to, I might be really excited about something or really down about something, and he's probably usually in the middle somewhere. And that's true of a few other guys too, and it's just a good balance. We're all going to have good days and bad days, and,
So you guys have a very open environment where you're authentic with each other and lean on one another.
Yeah, it's pretty necessary, I think.
I think it's huge. And it's really cool when you have folks who will not just bring you up from the low, but will also bring you down from when you get too high.
That's probably more important.
Mm-hmm. Well, because when you're on a high, that's when you can make some really bad decisions. Mm-hmm. When you're on a low, you can make bad decisions too, but usually they're somewhat necessary anyways, right?
Right.
We don't have a contract.
It's survival mode. Yeah. Whatever.
They might not be the right decision, but it at least preserved your capital or whatever the situation was. So all these folks are working together. Do you guys have weekly team meetings, or how does your Gillette team know who's working in Duluth? How do you guys deal with that?
Yeah. There's weekly team meetings. There's weekly. So we have a matrix organizational structure, which is pretty typical, I think, for engineering companies, because you've got different disciplines and you've got different offices, and you've got an office manager that has electrical, mechanical, civil. And you've got an office manager that has electrical, mechanical, civil. This office manager is electrical. This office manager is civil. Who's the boss of who? Who's manager? So there's a matrix structure in place that, people generally report to their office manager, but they have this mentorship relationship with a discipline manager. So there's the office, intra-office meetings, and but then also the discipline meetings to make sure that this mechanical engineer is getting exposed to enough stuff so that his career is growing in mechanical, structural, civil, whatever it is.
Gotcha.
So it takes constant communication.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming in.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Welcome to the Energizing America podcast, where we talk all things energy and why we need energy in our business and our lives and in our communities. And so on. We're excited to sit down with Reilly Sasse, Red River Welding. Welcome.
Thank you. It's good to
Red
be
River
here.
Welding, right?
Just Red River.
Just Red River.
Yep.
And what's the motto?
Fire inside.
I love the motto.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I especially like the American tinge that you have because obviously we're all about safely energizing America. So, Reilly, you're from Wyoming.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about Red River. What do you guys do?
Pressure vessels. That's our big thing. We started out as rig welders, just building pads in North Dakota. And we wanted to have an oil company or a fabrication company. It was our big thing is we didn't want to travel. We're all family guys. And we wanted to slowly move it to where it was one place, ship our product, And so it over the years, it just evolved into pressure vessels. And that's our main focus now. We'll do skids and I&E and everything associated with that pressure vessel, but it all starts with the pressure vessel. And so 72 inch and under is our focal point.
So you're welding these pressure vessels in Gillette, Wyoming, or where?
We do them all in Gillette, and we ship to Florida, Texas, North Dakota, Wyoming, all over.
Why to Florida? What goes on in Florida that needs vessels?
So there's a company we work with out of Florida. They do desalinization. Did I tell you about that?
No.
It's cool. So they're the first company. There's been a lot of companies over the years trying to figure out how to handle this salt water, because the salt water is the oil company's biggest cost. When you look at the cost of a barrel of oil to produce it, dealing with that salt water is the most expensive cost. And so, but this is the first company that I've seen anyway that's actually doing it big time. Like they can take the crappiest salt water you can imagine and turn it into San Pellegrino quality drinking water at the rate of 7,500 barrels a day.
Really?
Yeah. And it was
by using a vessel of some sort?
Yeah. Well, so the stuff we do for them, a lot of it isn't technically pressure vessels. It's tanks and cyclones, and there's some piping that goes with it, but it's all really high grade 2205 duplex stainless, and it's super technical. It's been a fun project because they're like the guys that are on their team, a lot of them came from like car design. So when we get their plans, they're like,
do they got wheels on them and stuff?
Well, they just think about things different, and so it's interesting how they draw their plans, but they showed up out of the blue. It was the craziest thing. It was like 2019 and, the oil market was falling apart. No, 2020, somewhere in there. And I got the form submission from our website.
Are you
not
serious?
kidding you? I thought it was spam. And I'm looking at this, and these dudes wanting like some stainless stuff. And I was like, oh, sure, I'll call the guy. So I called him, and it was just funny how it started because they were just starting. They had all this investment money, and they were like, man, we don't really know like about these steels. And they were and it turned into a big deal. I mean, we've done a ton of work with them, and we've worked with them for, I suppose it's around 2 years now. And they got their first full scale. It's technically a prototype, but they've got it sold. They shipped it to Pennsylvania, and it's in the first 1,000 hours of operation right now.
What is the coolest part about Red River and what you get to do there?
Oh, I think it's the people. I mean, it's all about the people. Like, that's what we started. My thought from the very beginning has always been that I just want to work somewhere where I want to work with the people that I want to work with and enjoy it, And I can't think of a better industry to be part of. It's so fun to be part of the oil industry and feel like you're, like you always say, energizing America, like, I don't know if I used the right word.
Yeah,
but
you did.
Yeah, it's like we're a key role here. Everybody here, you are turning the lights on in America, dudes. Like, this is real stuff. And that's cool to be part of that.
This isn't like making somebody's life just a little bit better. This is actually impacting their ability to live.
This isn't disposable income. This is like the lifeblood of America, and these dudes are making it tick. And I love that camaraderie. That's like the favorite thing of, middle of the night, we're bringing the plant back online or whatever it is. Like, them are the moments that are the best for me.
That's awesome.
Well,
we'll get back together again. Thanks for coming.
Sounds good. You bet. Thank you.
Welcome to the Energizing America podcast, where we talk all things energy and why we need it in our business and communities and life. Excited to sit down with Mr. Holmgren, Benjamin Holmgren with BuildWit this afternoon and catch up. How you doing?
I'm so fired up to be here, Shane. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming to our reigning city.
The dirty secret is, we're going to teach skills. Happy to. What we really want to teach is leadership.
So you're kind of like doing something really not allowed. You're combining skills with qualities.
Can you imagine?
Yeah. So I think that's what's so fascinating about BuildWit is it starts with a guy taking pictures of equipment along with like highlighting people behind the equipment. And all of a sudden folks are like, oh, wait a second. A robot can't operate a dozer. It actually needs a person, right? I think that's great that you guys are taking those two and combining them. How is the market reacting to that? Are they happy? Are they agreeing when you go visit with your excavation contractors?
People are fired up about this. And this is probably too soon to talk about this because we haven't officially launched it yet. We're selling an idea. The product is real. It's about to launch in a week from now or whenever this comes out. But what I just told you, at least the right companies, the companies we're talking to, they get it. They get the joke. They understand that, yes, we do need skills training, and that's super important because kids can get killed on job sites very easily. Kids can cost companies a lot of money on job sites by screwing stuff up. So we need to teach them how to do their job. We need to give kids confidence and context, and we need to give them a career path and show them, hey, if you learn all this stuff in labor, then you have a shot at being an operator and you have a shot at being a foreman and these kinds of things. But I think that's the elixir, and what we're hearing from our customers is yes, we want the skills. We want to teach our people skills. We also want to teach them mindsets for winning and how to lead people. Because what I just described to you, and again, it's not every company, but it's the right companies. We have dozens of those kinds of companies that get the joke, that have bought in, they've paid us money, they're ready to rock and roll the day this thing goes live. Because they're like, if we're not willing to invest in our people, not just their skills so we can get an ROI on them, but invest in them as humans to grow their careers and teach them how to treat people better and how to lead better. If we're not willing to invest in that, what are we doing here? We're working to solve a really big problem, and I'm working with amazing people and working with amazing people, like our customers who are actually doing this. But the thing is, Shane, this is not, just like leadership is not about me, this is not about BuildWit. I almost wish we could just wipe BuildWit out of the picture and focus on where the spotlight actually is shining, which is on the blue collar world. Call it the dirt world, call it electrical contractors, call it home builders, whatever it is. We need to, it's not about trying to make it look cool. Okay. This is the thing. We're not trying to make the dirt world look cool. It already is cool. We're just trying to show people it. Like, kids need to know about this. Kids in high school need to know. Kids in preschool need to know, like, hey, this is not only a career that you can come and create an amazing career here. You can also make great money. These are jobs that are in demand now and will be in demand far into the future. And you can work with amazing people and solve real problems to build the critical infrastructure that we need to live our lives. You think like you're sitting in some fancy little Silicon Valley high rise is trick? You should check out infrastructure. You should check out the dirt world. You should check out blue collar and then get back to me.
Well, and I think what's fascinating about it is that it never ends, right? I love careers that never end and missions that never end.
Infinite game.
There you go. You have it at BuildWit. So regardless of where the credit is due, I think that it's highlighting something, and that is the people. And I think we got to do another podcast about, I need to know who are the people in the dirt world. I think we need to know that. And our audience is desperate to know that. Why do they even matter in a more detailed fashion? Because they matter, and they matter greatly to this country. So thanks for coming on, Ben. Benjamin. This was awesome.
Thanks for having me, Shane. Really, really appreciate it.
We're going to talk again. Thanks. Well, welcome to the Energizing America podcast, where we talk all things energy and why we need it in our business, in our lives, in our communities. Excited to sit down with David Blackmon this morning and discuss energy, and especially the oil and gas industry, and renewables. And David, I understand you do a lot of writing for Forbes and other folks. Why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, I'm an energy contributor for Forbes on their website. Have been doing that for about 10 years now. Before that, I'd written at various other publications. I've been writing about energy for 35 years. I'm also the editor for Shale Magazine and also co-host of a radio program here in Texas called In the Oil Patch Radio Show.
So why oil and gas? What got your interest in oil and gas?
Well, I grew up in the 60s in a farming family, a little farm in Goliad County in South Texas, where there was always some oil and gas activity going on around us. Nothing big ever on us, unfortunately. And it was always something I was very interested in and fascinated with. I worked in the oil field as a roughneck during 2 summers in my college years. So got an understanding of how things work, the hard work that's involved. When I got out of college, my first job was with Coastal States Oil and Gas, run by Oscar White, a famous oil man. And I spent my whole career in the industry, 40 years, and kind of semi-retired in 2016, but, I'm still doing some consulting and a lot of writing about it. So
as you've been doing these radio programs, which I've listened into a few, and I've read a lot of your writings and followed you on LinkedIn for a while, or is there something that has really stuck out to you in 2022, a change in the industry compared to when you got your start in the industry several years back?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Lots of things have changed. The environmental stewardship has gotten so much better, for one thing. The industry makes more of an effort to effectively communicate about itself than it used to. And that's a wonderful change. They're still not very good at it, but getting better all the time. But, the main thing I think that's changed this year, especially in the shale part of the industry, is the new focus on not, allocation of capital towards higher returns to investors, conserving free cash flow, and not focusing so much on increasing drilling programs, even in this time of very high commodity prices. And that's, come about as a result of pressure from investors. And I think probably is a healthy change for the shale part of the business.
Well, for one thing, it definitely brings some stability to an otherwise historically very unstable industry. Who actually is the investor that's demanding the shareholder return?
Well, for the most part, it's just ordinary, everyday people. I mean, millions of Americans are invested in oil and gas stocks in their retirement funds. There are a lot of big investors, institutional investors like BlackRock that are ESG focused and put a lot of pressure on companies to not drill wells and try to restrict their capital flows to that. And they've been very successful in that regard as well. But, for the most part, the shareholders are people like
they're
me and you,
right?
Yeah.
And so why is the media missing this disconnect in the overall media that these aren't some big greedy oil CEOs? They're you, they're me, they're the California Teachers Retirement Pension Plan. They're possibly a host of state retirement plans, pension plans. They could be various mutual funds. We, i.e. the consumers, are the ones who are demanding the high return.
Sure, yeah. And the media misses it because it wants to. I mean, they're aware that corporations are in business to make money for their investors. That's why they exist, after all. But the media outlets like the Houston Chronicle that ran a big hit piece on big oil on Friday, an opinion article, they have an agenda. It's an anti-oil and gas agenda. The biggest newspaper in the city that's the capital of the industry, is very anti-oil and gas. So their agenda is to bash oil companies because they're a very easy target and they don't like fossil fuels.
Well, thanks for the conversation, David. Thanks for all your writing and keep up the good fight.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on. I really enjoyed the discussion.
All right. Take care. Welcome to the Energizing America podcast, where we talk all things energy, why we need energy in our business, communities, and in our lives, and especially why we need the oil and gas industry. Sitting down this morning with Irina, and you're a writer for oilprice.com. You put a lot of articles. Where else do people find you?
Well, right now, besides Oil Price, I do a Substack newsletter called Irina Slav on Energy. This is where I'm being a lot blunter than I allow myself to be on Oil Price.
So interestingly, I was in Dallas, Texas one day, and I was with a shuttle driver, was bringing me from one airport to another. And the gentleman had an Australian accent. So I asked him where he was from, and he said, Australia. And I said, well, what brought you to Dallas, Texas? And he said, you wouldn't believe me, but I'm going to be honest with you and tell you it was the price of energy. We went from being middle-class citizens in Australia to poor. He said they came out with a renewable deal that all of your power had to be on this renewable cycle. Tesla came through, gave everyone, sold all these battery chargers. They had a battery charger outside their home that would, produce when they had rolling blackouts. And he said these batteries didn't store enough power and the rolling blackouts kept getting longer. So they kept losing things. Their fridge would go out, the food would go out, their perishables. And he said, not only that, but the price of our power forced us into this, like we literally moved from middle-class citizens to low-income citizens. And he said the crazy part is around the mountain, they were mining coal and iron ore and putting it on boats and bringing it over to China to burn, to export over there and pollute the air over there. And he said, my wife and I, we couldn't do it. So we came over to America. We're middle-class citizens here, and we can afford our energy. And he said, but what's crazy about this is I'm seeing the same fundamental things happening in America that happened over in Australia. Yeah. And I think that's happening globally, that we have all these examples we could go look at. We could look at Germany. We can look at other European countries. We can look at Australia. We can look at Canada. There's been a lot of countries that have taken a very firm stance on climate change when it comes to their energy policy. And then years later, they've had to backtrack that to the point where all of a sudden you're not even seeing unity in the European Union about the energy crisis that we're in. There's a lot of conflicting opinions, and the leaders there are really having a hard time coming to agreement about the renewable goals, and we're starting to see them change.
Yeah, because in Eastern Europe, we remember the blackouts from the 80s. That's the thing, those older, 20-year-olds won't remember it. But me and my husband, we were old enough and we remember. He had it worse in Romania. They had blackouts all the time because they were exporting electricity in order to pay down their foreign debt. We also had blackouts in Bulgaria in the 80s, not as bad as the Romanian ones, but we still had them. Again, for electricity exports, for hard currency. We know what a blackout looks like and feels like. It's not nice. Western Europe has no, the majority of the population have no memory of blackouts, which makes them, easier to convince about the energy transition. And this is why it's Eastern European states that are, taking the stance. Let's not rush into it. Let's keep our coal for Poland or our Russian oil for Hungary. They know that their citizens also probably remember the blackouts and don't want them to happen again.
Very interesting. And that kind of goes back to one of the points we made. The best way to drive change is to feel it. And so if the rolling blackouts come to be here in America, you will see a fast change of opinion on how our energy transition needs to play out. Absolutely. Yeah, this is going to happen. As soon as you feel the pain, you will change your opinion pretty quickly. Yeah. Right. Irina, it's been awesome to chat with you and get your perspective, especially your global perspective. I really appreciate it. Folks ought to subscribe with you on Substack because there's some great behind the scenes, if you will, additional perspective on it. But keep up the good writing on oilprice.com. We certainly appreciate the articles and helps keep us informed. Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thank you. Take care.